Australia was set to shut down its 3G network in July 2024, but was delayed due to an alarming new realisation that millions of 4G and 5G devices can't call emergency numbers without an active 2G or 3G network. Regardless, Australia is pushing ahead with its shutdown of 3G, with new laws coming in place to require telcos to cease providing service to any devices they can't confirm as having full support, including that of emergency calling. What that means is even if you have a 4 or 5G phone, it may be blocked from Australian networks as soon as November 1st. The 3G shutdown will make Australia one of, if not the only country in the world without both a 2G and 3G network, instead having full reliance on voice over LTE, a non-standardized system. But with many other countries looking to follow, with similar shutdowns in upcoming years, all eyes are on Australia to see how this pans out. The advertising material from the Telcos and the Australian Mobile and Telecommunications Association has never informed Australians about the full extent of the 3G shutdown and its impact. It should be noted that the AMTA is an industry body representing service providers, device manufacturers, retail outlets, and has connections with phone recycling companies. The shutdown is a benefit to all those stakeholders. But even this 5G Sony Xperia won't work after Australia shuts down its 3G network. I built a test into my phone diagnostic app, iTest, that allows anyone to see if their device will work post-shutdown by checking for voice over LTE support. This Sony isn't using it and instead is relying on a 3G network to make and receive calls, despite being a 5G phone. Most people would never even recognize if their 4G or 5G phone is using 3G to make calls. 11 months ago, I covered some of the issues of this 3G shutdown. However, with disturbing new developments and possible banning of internationally purchased devices, I had to do a follow-up. To recap that video, 2G and 3G networks contain a standardized calling method known as circuit-switched calling. 4G and 5G networks have no standardized calling method, as they're only data standards. They rely on a separate system known as voice over LTE. And not all 4G and 5G phones support voice over LTE and instead rely on a 3G network to make and receive calls. Voice over LTE is not a standardized system. Different phone carriers or different device models can come with different voice over LTE support. Your phone must support the network you wish to connect to, your SIM card must be provisioned for voice over LTE, and your network provider must also support voice over LTE. And of course, the setting must be switched on in settings. If that all sounds confusing, it is. And in fact, the telcos don't even know the exact number of devices that do fully support voice over LTE, and what phones partially support it, and those that don't at all. But in 11 months, a new discovery has only made matters worse. Some devices can call over voice over LTE perfectly, but are unable to make an emergency call to 000 or 911. Whether that be because they're hard-coded to use the older 3G network, or because the phone doesn't fully support your carrier's voice over LTE system. And this is the reason the government is now reviewing legislation that would ban devices telcos can't verify, from international phones to phones that they just didn't sell or came from another carrier. This will cause mega amounts of unnecessary e-waste, completely destroy the used phone market, and provide phone carriers in Australia with a complete monopoly on phone sales. Australia has 3 phone networks: Telstra, Vodafone, and Optus. Vodafone and Optus use a generic voice over LTE system, but Telstra, they use a proprietary one, meaning not all phones will work with Telstra. They must come loaded with Telstra's special modem software that allows it to work. And this issue is prevalent with a lot of carriers around the world. I have a Galaxy Note 7 from Verizon, which supports voice over LTE with Verizon, but not my phone carrier, so it won't work post 3G shutdown. A 4G only carrier in India has overcome the issues of not supporting 3G by creating a separate app, which allows for calling over voice over LTE for phones that do not support it. Australian telcos have refused to do such a thing, which implies they don't care about the amount of devices they're rendering useless and are using the shutdown as an opportunity to sell more new phones. I spoke with James, the man trying to save Australia's 3G network, and he's partly responsible for the delays to the shutdown. He's a telecommunications expert who's been fighting the shutdown from the very beginning, making submissions to the ACCC, giving testimony in government hearings and inquiries, to writing his own articles on this issue. I've invited him to say a few words about the shutdown and its complications. James, tell us, why are you trying to save the 3G network?
Well, it kind of all goes back to June of last year. I thought, okay, this is June 2023. Telstra announced, next year they want to shut down their 3G. It's like, okay, well, I probably should alert the government about that there are 4G devices that don't have the ability to make calls or emergency calls. And I was the only person in the entire country to contact the government, warning them about this issue prior to sort of February of this year. The industry was downplaying the issue, saying it was going to be like the 2G switch off, which was obviously not going to be correct.
We're being told we must have phones that support voice over LTE, but is it really that straightforward?
Everyone's assumed that voice over LTE is one standard or one setting on a device. It's just as simple as going into the settings and turning it on and it will work. But that's just not what happens.
The shutdown has been delayed twice now, but for what reason?
At the inquiry, it was revealed there's hundreds of thousands of 4G phones that the telcos believe can't make any calls, and then it was hundreds, I think it was it 600 some odd thousand, farm equipment and industrial equipment and water meters and utility meters and machine-to-machine industrial equipment, lift phones, thousands and thousands of lift phones. And it was talked about in the Senate. There was a number about 40 or 50,000 extra devices that the industry wasn't aware of that were impacted before. Our iPhone models, actually, and there are maybe an iPhone 11 or 12, and there are latest version of software and their iOS, latest version of iOS, and they support voice over LTE, but they're US-Canada models. And those particular US-Canada models, because they use an Intel modem and not a Qualcomm modem, don't support band 28. So if you go into the bush and you've only got Telstra's band 28 coverage, if that device can't see band 28, can't connect band 28, you can't make an emergency call. You had the industry just some months ago not realizing that not all iPhones are the same and they don't all support the right bands. So if they didn't know about that, and they weren't on top of that, what else are they unaware about? Big headline number of 1 million affected devices resulted in some more scrutiny on it, and then a delay, which was again the industry voluntarily delayed.
Some other countries shut down 3G already, so what makes Australia any different?
It was convenient because Optus, in their submission to the 3G shutdown inquiry, cited, some UK providers had shut down their 3G network. But ignoring that the UK still has a 2G network, and that network is expected to be maintained until about 2030, 2033. So the providers have been cherry-picking their examples.
Is there any countries that have shut down both 2G and 3G?
Actually, most of the world has not switched off both 2G and 3G. And this is sort of a bit of an experiment here. And, we're maybe, on paper, the second or third cab off the rank to do it.
Would you say the shutdown so far has been a bit of a mess?
There were people on the Vodafone network that woke up one day in the middle of January with brand new 4G and 5G devices that didn't have any call service anymore. And if you test those devices, they might also be on Telstra's support list or Optus's support list. But when you go to put a Vodafone SIM card on the phone, it loads a different modem software, and suddenly that device can no longer make an emergency call. People posting online recently that some months ago, people have got 2023 or 2024 model 5G phones, and they were receiving text messages through the SMS system saying that your device is impacted and you need to upgrade. To now only be told a few months later, oh, sorry, we were wrong about that. We've now got in contact with the manufacturer. Your device will work. Sorry for the confusion. So how many people have replaced their device unnecessarily because of false and misleading information from the telcos?
My sister-in-law faced that exact same situation. She was told her 5G OnePlus 8 Pro won't work after the shutdown, but now it appears to be supported.
Providers, like my provider, sent a marketing email saying, it'll be mayhem. Here's our mayhem sale. Now it's time to upgrade. There are even devices that have been sold at JB Hi-Fi and Harvey Norman in the past 2 or 3 years that are $1,000 plus phones that are sold under the network unlocked category that are 4G and 5G and support voice over LTE, but they don't work on Telstra because Telstra doesn't support a generic open market voice over LTE profile. And so if the telco doesn't believe that device can work, because they assume it's running an older version of software and it's running a modem configuration that doesn't do emergency calling, they just will block it because they have no idea what works. And so you will now be prevented from running custom software. Various like Exynos Samsung devices like Note 9s with like custom ROMs, the voice over LTE doesn't work because the way that Samsung implemented their provisioning systems is sort of closed source and proprietary. None of this stuff is properly open source. And so custom ROM support and third-party software support that, is, doesn't have the carrier bloat and is more privacy focused, you actually can't necessarily use.
Do you think there's a commercial bias for the switch off?
They've rolled out 5G and they want a return on investment. And not a lot of people are interested in 5G. So, well, this is a convenient option. Let's just get people to buy new devices. The rights of consumers are just being eroded away, just like with device support and repairability. It's all a part of a broader narrative. They were asked a question I wrote, which was how many roaming devices are there in Australia connected to their network? And Telstra didn't know that answer. And so they had to provide that in writing or notice. And when they did that, they said in the month of July, there were 2.3 million international roaming devices connected to Telstra's network. It will be the case that there will be hundreds of thousands, up potentially millions of phones from roamers in other countries that come here that won't be able to make an emergency call. And it just takes one national tragedy to happen before we start saying, ooh, maybe we shouldn't have switched this network off.
Thank you, James, for coming on and sharing your expertise on network infrastructure and the issues facing the 3G shutdown. I believe James has done some great research and testing, maybe even more than the telcos have. He's now fighting for consumer choice, to stop Australia banning 4G and 5G devices that presently work fine. So if you want the choice to use whatever device you like from whoever you purchased it from, I would suggest signing James's petition, linked below. There was really no easy way of telling if your device will work after the shutdown. There's a number that you can text that's supposed to tell you, but as James pointed out to me, it's not accurate. So I created a test in my application iTest that allows you to check if your device is presently using voice over LTE when making calls. You simply dial a phone number, such as voicemail, wait around 5 seconds, and hang up. If the test fails, it used 3G or 2G to make that call. It surprised me how many phones still have a reliance on 3G networks despite being 4G or 5G phones. But like James said, it could be the result of my network not using an open voice over LTE standard, preventing the phone from calling over voice over LTE. Some phones may mention if it's enabled or even show you an icon during a call, but my phone makes no mention of voice over LTE during a call, no icon shows, and searching settings returns nothing. But it's enabled and working as reported by iTest. Even phones that show 4G LTE in the menu bar don't necessarily support calling over 4G. Testing the Samsung, it falls back on 3G when you place a call. It's a Verizon US model. It supports what Verizon calls advanced HD calling, which I presume is voice over LTE, but it only works on the Verizon SIM card in the US, rendering this phone useless after the shutdown of 3G here in Australia. This brand new Nothing CMF supports voice over LTE with my Australian SIM. Running the test, it passes. But with voice over LTE having such poor compatibility and no standardization, we still don't know the exact number of affected devices, only that it's over 1 million. Other devices may continue to work after the shutdown, but won't be able to place emergency calls. The current recommendation being not to test your phone to see if it can call 000, leaving people in the dark until the network is down and it's all too late for people to voice concern. Even the Australian network provider Optus didn't believe voice over LTE could be solely relied upon just a few years ago. Now they're going against their own advice. 1 million devices needing to be replaced, that'll sure drive inflation higher, not to mention the waste that will come out of this. This shutdown needs to stop. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing and check out the playlist for tech that's not what it seems. And if you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.